Good morning, this is the Phoenix Blue Update for Monday the 24th of April, brought to you by Tom Colley. With French presidential election first round is over, the votes are counted, or 97% of the votes are counted, and we have a result. If we go over to the news announcements page here, this is a chart from the BBC this morning based on data coming out of the French Ministry of the Interior, so the data is official with 97% of the votes counted. We have a winner, or a leader as such, in Emmanuel Macron. He's a centralist candidate. He came in first place. In second place, we have Marine Le Pen from the far-right National Front. That was, as the polls were predicting, the last polls that we discussed on Friday. So these two candidates will go forward to the second round on May the 7th in a simple head-to-head contest. Now, what does that mean from a trading perspective? Well, the markets, or certainly the Euro's worst nightmare scenario would have been far-right Le Pen and far-left Jean-Luc Mélenchon as being in the runoff for the presidency. That hasn't happened. That will be a relief to the markets. In addition, we've had François Fillon. His party have already put their support behind Emmanuel Macron, as has Hamon, who is the socialist from the Socialist Party. They have the current president in François Hollande, who didn't stand for election again, and they have again said that the party support Emmanuel Macron as being the centralist candidate, i.e. nearest to their opinion, and with the intention of keeping what they would perceive as the extremist far-right Marine Le Pen out of the presidency. So on that basis, it looks extremely difficult for Le Pen to make it into the presidency. The far left vote on Jean-Luc Mélenchon haven't at this stage committed their party to supporting either of the candidates. They may not do that, but if you look at the far left versus the far right, the two extremes of the political spectrum, it's a big step for a far left voter to switch to the far right. So potentially, and the markets are certainly perceiving this on the open, we're seeing gaps across most markets, or certainly in the Euro and Swissy, etc. But we're clearly seeing that the markets see this as being a safe vote. You could say that the Trump Brexit scenario has actually played out already at this stage, because even with Le Pen, if Le Pen didn't win, neither of these parties have been in power before. Emmanuel Macron's party has only existed for about 12 months, and at 39 will be the youngest French president since Napoleon Bonaparte. So we could see that a Macron win would meet the potential desire for change that we saw in the States and in the UK with Brexit and Trump, but without the extremist getting into power. Just before we go and look at the charts, worth noting today we've got New Zealand and Aussie bank holidays, or we've had them. Their working days will be at an end shortly. They would, or if they were working days. So those markets certainly in the early part of the day and what's happened overnight will have lacked liquidity. The only red flag news we've got today is 9 o'clock, and we've got the German business climate data out. So over to the charts and how they've reacted so far to the French presidential election, where we stand at the moment. Well, you can see we've had a really big gap up. The market gapped up right up to this level here. It's pulled back to support through here. The question today is, will we see a further pullback for the gap to close? We know markets like to close gaps. It's not a certainty, but it is a high probability. So in any trading respect, we don't see any opportunities and will be predominantly out of the market today, but there would potentially be a trade if price was to pull back, close the gap before returning back to the long side. We've also seen that euro strength obviously reflected in the dollar index. Again, we had a gap down, and price is now sitting, and it is early this morning. This chart was taken about 6 o'clock this morning. Price at this time is sitting below what we perceive as a very significant level at 99 US dollars. Clear level of support potentially turning into resistance. We've had a break below this trend line that we've been in. We've been above for a very long time. So a clear move to the bearish side on the dollar index, but it remains to be seen what happens through the day as all the markets kick in. Over on the yen, well, we've had a yen weakness. We've had a gap up. Again, at the point that we this chart was, screen was captured, price had gapped up and pulled back to support at this 110 level through here. Have to be honest, that's a level that I was watching last week for a short trade, intraday short trade. Clearly that's not going to be relevant now. Will this close the gap down to here? And there would be a potential intraday trade there to take advantage of the closing of that gap. Over on the pound, well, we haven't seen as much reaction from the pound. We're very much in this consolidation after the big move we had up on Tuesday last week when PM May announced the snap election. If Emmanuel Macron becomes president of France, he is a big Europhile. He seeks greater integration for France or for the EU in general, and would potentially be perceived as strengthening the EU's negotiating position in the Brexit negotiations. So whereas last week we had the announcement of the UK election being a positive for the pound, there is potential for downside in this market because of that French election result, for the reason that I've just mentioned. Over on the Swissy, which always is obviously is related to the European currencies, we've seen a big gap down. This gap has gone back up and closed already, when again this chart was taken about 6 o'clock in the morning. So that's an overview where we are. A lot of caution needed in the markets today. And that is a big gap, a really significant event. And you may have done analysis over the weekend, and it may have to some extent invalidated that analysis, and you will need to sit down and think again if it's taken out levels that you were looking to trade, etc., etc. So our advice would be extremely cautious today. Let the markets settle, let the reaction, certainly when the markets officially open and the big players really come to the table. Let's see what the markets do, and then reassess potentially tomorrow once the markets have absorbed the news. Okay guys, that's it for this morning. Be interesting to see how this week pans out, and good luck with your trading, and we'll speak to you again in the morning. Take care. Goodbye.